My cousin college in there.
All right, we're on.
All right. But I'm going twice in 1 week. I'm going this weekend and then going up to the
Hey, have a seat. Camera.
It's the best time. Right before it gets
Oh, last year you got last winter.
All right. Bring this meeting to order. That's all right. So, yeah, we're just going to get started. So, welcome to October's meeting. This is our 5th meeting. So I'm so glad to see all of you here. It's a great turnout that we get pretty much every month. It always warms my heart to have all you guys show up. It's exactly what I wanted. So, but with that, we'll just get started. We'll talk about what's new. So first up is the iOS 9 lock screen bypass vulnerability. We'll also be talking about El Capitan 10.11.1 that just dropped this week. Also be talking about iOS 9.1. And the new Apple warranty site has now added capture. We'll talk a little bit about that as well, because that impacts certain automated functions that some of you may be running. And we'll also talk about the JNUC, the Jamf Nation user conference that happened last week, because I know a lot of us here use Casper. So we'll talk about what happened there, and or more correctly, we'll talk about what didn't happen there. So let's just get started there. So the lock screen bypass. Basically what this does is allows through it's a little complicated, but essentially what you end up doing is that you put in the bad password up until like the last time. The last time you hit the button to activate Siri and tell her you want to set up an alert. And then through that, you can then get access to messages. And through messages, you can then look at all the pictures, browse through your contacts, and basically get up to access stuff that you're not supposed to be able to access from where you've started. So this affects specifically iOS 9.0 and 9.01. But the good news is they patched it in iOS 9.02. So anybody who's running iOS 9 wants to make sure that you're either on 9.0.2 or 9.1 now, because 9.1 is up. So, and included a link to the original source. So when the slides go up later, you can just click the link and see the original article for more details if you're interested in that. So next up is El Capitan. So, of course, the big news with El Capitan is obviously system integrity protection. I'm not going to go into depth about it here, but that's all right because Rich Troutman has done it for us. And there's a link here in the slide that will take you to his blog post that details what SIP is, how it works, and what it means for all of us, and for all the vendors that you're trying to get compatible apps for. He was also the subject of his talk at the JNUC. The video of that, I think, will be released in a couple of weeks. So look for that on the Jamf Nation YouTube channel when that comes out. But it's essentially the same content that's on his blog post here. So the TLDR is basically Apple has cordoned off certain aspects of the system folder and other places, and also cordoned off a lot of the Unix subdirectories. So anything that wrote into one of these, any applications that didn't already write to either the traditional Unix locations like USR local, or did not abide by Apple's guidelines, will now be forced to, because nothing can write to there, not even root. So, and I know there's some articles out there that basically saying that Apple has like basically handcuffed root, but that remains I'm not really convinced yet that that's actually a problem or going to be a problem going forward, especially since we have locations that we can write to. For us admins, there are things that have been accepted. Immediately there's a bunch of applications that have been whitelisted. Things like the JAMP binary and some other agents and applications that they basically said, okay, at least initially these things are fine to be in this location, but at some point we reserve the right to change that, so you better make sure you write to the proper locations. So, but yeah, as I said, Rich Troughton goes into that in much greater detail. The other thing people in El Capitan also want to be aware of is net booting and bless, because they made with SIP affects bless in a very special way. But the gist of it is, and again, Rich has this link here is another one of Rich's posts. But the gist of it is if you currently use bless as part of your imaging process or netboot process, then you're going to have to whitelist that now in SIP. If you don't use bless currently, you have nothing to worry about. You can just still do your normal procedure. So that's basically the gist of it.
Does it break anything in Deploy Studio?
Only if you're writing to, only if you're actually specifically specifying using bless to say go to this thing. If you're not, if you're just using the regular default netboot service or Deploy Studio service, it should be fine. Okay, it's a new feature, and yes, it's a Reddit link. Yes, I know, but still, this is a rebooting without actually rebooting. So there is a new function in El Capitan that allows you to essentially reboot the user space and everything in the user space, but without rebooting the entire machine. So I don't think anybody's really taken advantage of it. It's just a feature there, but I think that's what Apple uses to do their software updates and drop you right back into the user space, so you just log in. So, so that's something that maybe is something we can use for our own update process when we're doing that. So we don't have to do either a log out, well, sort of like doing a log out in Monkey or in any of the other patch managements that may or may not be out there. And so that's something that we will probably be leveraging in the future, and you'll probably be hearing more about as soon as someone has figured out a way to use it. So, and so this is a new issue. It's called the evil triangle. So basically what happens if you are already specifying a software update server and you use a cache server, then in El Capitan, your Macs can't get updates. The software update service kind of chokes on trying to figure out what it's supposed to do. So this is a known issue. It's been brought up. It has not been fixed in 10.11.1. Really, pretty much the workaround is to rewrite to remove your custom software update server and just point back to Apple's, and that seems to fix it. So I know if you're having, but I don't know if that's necessarily practical for people who have like limited bandwidth and have a software update server so that people aren't always hitting Apple's trying to get out. So, but that's something to be aware of too. The evil triangle is also a link, so when the slides go up, you can follow that out, follow that link to see more about that. And
something I forgot to put in the thing.
yes?
Deploy Studio is not compatible with 10.11.
Deploy Studio is not compatible with 10.11. So
An hour today.
yeah. So there you go. So that explains your issue. So yes, so the 10.11 also includes some security updates. Specifically, there's some EFI updates that affect both Mavericks and Yosemite. I think, but I haven't confirmed, that this may have patched Thunderstrike, but I'm not positive on that. just the way they worded it seemed to think that well, the patch it isn't really so much a patch as they removed stuff. So, but again, I haven't confirmed whether it removes Thunderstrike, but my feeling is that it is, because they were porting it all the way back to Mavericks. And then that's when I think it first started appearing. So, if Jesse were here, he'd be able to answer that. He's a little under the weather. So, so there's plenty of security updates in this. As I said, the FI one applies to both, to the last two versions of the operating system as well. And there's a lot of different things. Specifically, the T-Pwn exploit that we talked about here, I think 2 months ago, that is now officially patched as of 10.11.1. And as well as another one by the same researcher who published it the day 10.11 dropped. That's also been patched, and there's a bunch of other patches as well. So that's definitely something. For those of you who can deploy El Capitan, please go to the 0.1 update as soon as possible. So make sure that. And iOS 9.1 was released. So the big thing I took away is we had more emojis.
They did with 10.11.1 too.
Yeah. Yes. But the meat of it is, again, they patched a lot of stuff in security updates in this one as well. And it's for still, as always, still 4S or later. So patch that up, secure those iPhones. So this one, the one thing that I didn't put on the slide, but I know it fixes, as I mentioned, the iPhone bypass lock. It also fixes the one we talked about last month, which I forget off the top of my head. So yes, so we definitely want to update those as soon as possible, if you're able to, anyway. So this is a new thing. I don't know how many of you used to go to the apple.com/support website, and then scroll all the way to the bottom. It says check warranty status. So that used to take you to this self-solve Apple website, apple.com site, which was pretty much open. So so a lot of people just wrote either EAs if you're in Casper, or quick little programs to run warranty checks, to automate warranty checks, so you can provide your users with like warranty status information. Well, they have essentially changed that. This is now the new URL, and I don't know if you can make out the picture here, but there's now a capture code on this. So pretty much for the that pretty much kills automation. This was something that we talked about, that was talked about at length in the Slack admins channel, Mac admin Slack channel. So as mentioned, self-solve sites no more. C-Shet, who works over at CERN, has done a little bit of workaround, and he's a Casper user, so most of this sort of stuff should work for you. And I think there's some talk about him trying to do a general, workaround as well for those of us who don't use Casper. To try and sort of and essentially what it does is it kind of estimates the warranty coverage date. So since we can't actually grab that information from Apple anymore.
But does it decode the serial number?
I think it decodes the serial number. Yeah.
So, Serge, this is the same timing when GSX now requires all your API.
Well, the GSX stuff is required the certification authentication since August.
But then this is probably all part of the same project.
It's probably part of all the same.
Everyone, please talk to us only over the API and
Right.
Blah, blah, blah.
So yes. So of course the other option is now to talk to your upper rep, see if they are going to offer something as an API that we can use, because it really is kind of makes our life harder for no good reason. And last thing we're going to talk about is the JNUC. So it was held last week. How many people here do not know what the JNUC is? So the JNUC is pretty much the yearly user conference that Jamf Software holds in Minneapolis, and I think it's now like one of the largest, and not the largest, Mac admin user conferences around. So I think maybe Mac sysadmin is close, or the Mac tech ones are close as in sort of number of users. But so one of the big things that happened last week was they officially introduced their new CEO. He was an IBM guy. His name is Dean. I actually met him. Nice guy. And they did talk a lot about their new emphasis on quality and quality control, and how they're committed to putting out the best product. At the same time, they also wouldn't commit to saying when a patch management system would be coming, other than saying that they're only going to release it when it's ready. So for those of us who've been eagerly anticipating something from Jamf saying, this is patch management, this is when the beta is coming out, this is when we're expected to release it, I think a lot of us were disappointed in that respect. The conference itself, there was like plenty of talks that were certainly interesting. The most significant one, and the one that got the most press, was the one from IBM detailing how they're deploying like roughly 2,000 Macs a week using DEP and Casper. As I said, that was the most talked about thing there. But as far as anything new coming from Jamf down the pipeline, there hasn't been anything announced yet. So for those of you who are looking into other systems or holding off looking into other methods of either patch management or supplementing what you have from Jamf, since we don't have a date, we'll probably go ahead with those plans until we hear something concrete. Assume it doesn't exist. So.
One note related to that.
Yes.
The developer in a new job, so it doesn't look like he's going to be needing that anymore. So.
Yes. So there's also a big question mark about some of the tools that Shay Craig, the developer of the JSS importer, Python JSS, Spruce.
And a mean paddle boat peddler.
Oh yes, and that guy. And I think there was one other one, maybe. The JSS recipe creator as well, and what were you saying?
Saving throw?
And saving throw. Yes. So yeah, he is no longer a Casper user. So development of these is in limbo at this moment.
He's going to still try.
What?
I think he's going to still try, but
Yeah. But I think it's going to require a lot of us Casper users helping him out. Yes. So we're kind of in a bind. But fortunately, Mike is here to detail something about patch management for those of you who are looking into alternate sources of support for that. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mike.
Okay. All right, so as Serge mentioned, I'm going to talk about a different patch management system. Some of you might have heard of it. It's called Monkey. Monkey eventually will come up on the screen. All right, so I'm not sure how to begin this. This is just an introduction to Monkey.
Why don't you start with the basics? Tell us what it is.
Okay, so I'm Mike Solin. I work over at St. Joseph's University, just outside of Philly, on the city hub in Philly, technically Philly. So this talk is not a Casper versus Monkey overview. I actually do not use Casper for any Mac management, so I can't actually give you versus, comparison. As Serge mentioned, sometimes people use both. They can augment each other. And this is also not going to be a deep dive into Monkey. For that, Nate Walk gave a really good presentation a few years ago, and I'm pretty sure there have been more since. But if you really want to understand how it works, am I in front of the camera?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
You're good.
You're good. You're good.
So I'm just going to give just an overview, very general, what Monkey is. Monkey is a software deployment system. It's written by Greg Nagel. He works over at Walt Disney Animation Studios. And you can deploy packages, scripts, self-contained application, and newly added support for configuration profiles. So if you export those from Profile Manager, download them from someone's GitHub website, since they're just XML files, you can import those into Monkey, and it supports the same versioning, where if you change it, you can put the new version to Monkey, say that's 1.0.1, and it will make sure that that's installed. It can also be used in conjunction with the local software update server, so you can deploy OS 10 updates, such as the 10.11.1 update that just came out. We use Reposado for that, but you can use the built-in OS 10 server software update service as well. So Monkey's a little unique in that everything happens client-side. You build packages client-side, you create all the logic for how those packages installed, you do all of that client-side. And for your clients, when they check into the Monkey server, they do all the version comparisons client-side. So the server itself can be any type of web server. We actually use Windows 2012 R2, but it can be anything that can host a website. You can even use a hosted service outside. You can find some web server. It doesn't require a Mac or even Tomcat or anything running on the server, because it's just a series of files. So on the client Macs, a background process checks the server every 1 to 2 hours. It's randomized. It's at least an hour plus some random number for updates. It downloads a text file with all of the software that you have in your repository, and it compares against what it should have installed and what it does have installed, and then pulls that down. By the point that it has everything downloaded, that's when it prompts the user to install software if it hasn't already installed it in the background. And in most cases, you can install stuff in the background. We push Flash Player in the background, Firefox updates in the background. Obviously, if Firefox is running, you can't update it while it's running, but
Support for blocking application.
correct. So you can add which application. So in the case of Microsoft Office, Office has a script that quits all your web browsers, at least Office 2011. We haven't done 2016 yet, but it'll close all your web browsers, so you can add blocking applications for Safari, Firefox, Chrome, and that's when it'll present to the user, and it will refuse to run the installation unless those programs are closed. So Monkey is entirely command line based. So to admin it, there are command line tools to do all the tasks you would as an administrator, and you would run those tools against your repository, which is just a folder mounted from your web server. So you would want to have like SMB or AFP access to your server to mount the repository on your admin machine. And those would be the same files that are served up over HTTP of the server to all your clients. However, there is a GUI. Somebody wrote a GUI. It's really nice. I'll demo it in a second, but it's honestly helped me a lot because it helps me put together sort of all the different moving parts of Monkey. The command line stuff, there's a lot of, it's very good for a lot of things. In fact, I use Monkey import. As I mentioned on the last slide, Monkey import is the best for pulling in a package because Monkey admin does things a little differently. But and make catalogs. I do that all the time, but that's getting ahead of myself. So I'm going to demo Monkey admin. I have it running on my machine. This is live from my work repository. These are all the packages that we have, and it's about 112 gigabytes. I checked yesterday. So all the packages that we push out fit into a 120 gigabyte.
Those numbered ones are those Apple software updates?
Correct. So we can add metadata for software updates, such as a force install by date. So in the case of 10.11.1, that will be force installed by Tuesday. If you're running 10.11, which we don't support yet, but if you happen to be running it, we will make you install 10.11.1 Tuesday at 11:15 a.m. And if your computer's asleep, and when it wakes up, it will check in and then see that you have to install it. So that is one of the features that's supported.
We'll install them in the background too.
Yep, we do that for the Xprotect updates and the Gatekeeper updates. We install those in the background for people.
Even iTunes and stuff like that. Printer driver updates.
So how does Monkey install the updates? Does it just overwrite or?
In many cases, because they're package installers have the logic that if you have, let's say you put out some app.1.0 as a package, and then you put some app.1.1 that contains a different set of files, the system will delete the files from some app.1.0 that are not present in the 1.1 package. So out of the box, Monkey uses receipts for packages to determine whether it's installed. For drag and drop apps, it uses the version string. You can override that. You can even override it with a script. So you can write a script that says, if this exists, exit 0, which triggers the installation, or exit 1, which triggers not installing. So we've used that. There might be a better way, but we've used that for removing programs in some cases. Like, we've had programs that were out there that shouldn't have been. So I would write a script that has the install check that says, if this program exists with this version string, exit 0, which then triggers a script that does just an RMRF on the application.
So what does the user see when you run these updates?
That's actually a really good question. I should have had a screenshot for that. There is a program called Managed Software Center. It looks like the App Store. I think I can open it from here.
It's a self-service kiosk.
Mm-hmm. So my manifest has like almost nothing in it, but you can see that I have a printer and I can remove it. Does this show up? Okay. I can install GarageBand, OneNote. Those are the things I put in my manifest. So you can browse by categories.
Should look very familiar for Casper.
It's super handy when you're onboarding new users and you have like a set amount of printers. Because what you can do is, as you're onboarding the user, you get them familiar with the self-service tool, but they don't feel like they have to keep bugging you for installation. They can just keep checking that, which is very nice. And also, I'm not sure, this is actually a question I had. So like, say there's like a 0 day on a particular app, or something like
Flash.
that, extension like Flash, for example. I'm not sure, but I think Monkey, if you check against that, can remove that. I'm not sure about like extensions like Flash.
Flash overwrites the old version.
Right.
So that'll, if you push out a new version, the auto package recipe has it as a silent install. Sure. So it'll just overwrite the old one and do it in the background.
Yeah, it's really nice because it's all super, like the user would never really know it most of the time unless you had a self-service app, which is really nice.
One of the common complaints that we had before we had Monkey was that people were prompted to install Office updates, Flash Player updates, Java updates, all that stuff just being, and nobody would do it. At some point, people just get buried in update pop-ups and then just stop doing it entirely. So this puts everything in one interface. It's consolidating. And I think people like that. It makes it so that we're pushing out the latest stuff so we can say so many people have the latest Flash player, so they're not vulnerable. So the campus isn't just completely Wild West vulnerable, but at the same time, people aren't being bothered to install stuff that can be installed in the background. So in most cases, I do try to set things as, mark them as unattended so that they don't prompt the user. Mostly because a lot of people just don't install stuff, especially if it requires a reboot, which is why we have to force updates, like 10.11.1, because computers will never get patched otherwise. I don't have anything pending, but...
If you define that the computer is going to get a set of software, it'll keep that up to date. And if people go through and use self-service and manage Software Center to choose to install something, it keeps what you've installed up to date, but it doesn't care about anything that hasn't been installed.
Correct. You can adopt things. So if you have an old version of a program, say you have Firefox on there, but we didn't force you to have Firefox. Chrome's a better example because we don't actually force anybody to have Chrome, but it's there if you wanted to install it. If you have it installed, you can go in and opt into having Monkey Managed Software Center update your version of Google Chrome for you. We've actually, the other thing about this, some people call it self-service, but I don't know if that's taboo because that's a Casper thing. But the Managed Software Center, we were able to offload a lot of stuff out of what we were deploying in machines because we were finding people were buying MacBook Airs with 120 gig SSDs, and we were taking a large chunk of that by making you have GarageBand and iMovie. And if you never used it and you deleted it, Monkey would go, oh, you don't have GarageBand, and then download it and reinstall it for you. So giving people the option to not install that. Oh, nice. Okay.
Plus, if it's on a local server too, it's just like having a local software update server. So just super fast, unattended, like user wouldn't even have it.
It takes about 15, 20 minutes to build out a machine.
Alistair wants to say something.
What?
Alistair wants to say something.
Should I open Slack or?
No, it's on the Google Hangout.
Okay. Oh, he's gonna. Is there a way to like?
Hold on,
type
we're
his
trying
audio
to
in?
figure that out.
It's not a good way to do that.
There's not a good way to
At least not with that, not with this setup.
Yeah, we could dictate. If
We could
that's-
just ignore
Pretty
Alistair, call us.
FaceTime?
Maybe we had too much technology.
I've said something wrong already.
Too much technology? Sorry.
Use the
just-
managed
just
software
just
center
tell him to
to
chime
push
in.
some sort of
We'll
video
read his
conferencing
question.
That's what I
utility
said.
like BlueJeans,
Yes.
and then we can use that. Maybe not BlueJeans.
So you should probably.
TeamViewer.
Alistair just wants to add that the Managed Software Center was actually modeled after the App Store.
Correct. I heard that they ripped out the CSS from the App Store at the time.
It does look it.
So I put a slide in here for explaining catalogs and manifests, but essentially manifests contain software that a computer should have. In our case, I spent several days going through the Monkey mailing list trying to figure out how Greg Nagel, the author of the software, uses Monkey so that I don't do anything so crazy that when I ask for help that he's like, why are you doing it that way? Which happens. So,
Well, it is great.
Yeah.
so in our case, we went by host names. Every computer on campus has its own unique name that we set as IT. So in my case, mine is called msolin-mv pro, MV Pro. So I have a manifest on the server called msolin-mv pro. So when the computer checks in, as long as my host name is the same, it will pull down that XML file with all the software that I should have. So we have one manifest for every machine. I can show you in Monkey Admin actually. This is the list of manifests.
Do you push out managed profiles to not have the user able to change their host name?
No, because all of our users have local admin rights. So
That's great.
yeah, at some point,
That's documentation that you have to put in the back end for troubleshooting that.
and we've had it. So I actually have I'll show you in a second, but I do have a way to check who's not pulling down their manifest, so I can find out why. And it's probably because they changed the name of their computer to have like emoji or something stupid. So
Don't talk bad about the taco emoji.
you know, that's not a bad idea, is putting emoji in there, but it's not policy.
Yeah. It's hard to paste in a terminal. I guess.
Yes.
Not quite as deep as
It's not loading. Oh, here we go. So here's all the manifests that we have. And in fact, we have a manifest structure where we're nesting manifests. So everybody gets the core software manifest, which contains all this stuff. And that is every computer. And then from there, we break it down to whether it's a faculty staff machine, whether it's a lab computer, a podium, or even a server. We manage our servers using this too.
Dr. Joe.
Yes, DocuTil's in there, some other stuff.
Outset.
Mm-hmm.
This is basically just the amount that you're doing the
Mm-hmm. Yep, I can actually show you too. Let me get out of here. I can show you in the Monkey repository. This is all it looks like. And this is a folder I added that doesn't actually have anything in it. So in the manifests view, whenever it decides to load, they're all just XML files. It's about 800 or 900 up until this point. It's really hard to prune them because as we replace computers, there's no mechanism to communicate back to us that a computer doesn't exist. So if I delete the manifest for that computer and then it reappears in the network, they're not going to get software. So that's why we're up to 916
They
manifests.
fall back to it. It's like default.
Right.
There's always a fallback to them.
So you can set a default manifest, but I only put in there to keep Monkey itself up to date and install Monkey Report, which is our reporting software that I'll show you guys in a second, so that I know it's out there. But we've had Monkey installed on like student machines where it's not supposed to be. We're not managing student software, so I'd rather not push the whole thing to them. I'd rather just keep it as simple as possible. And when I know that it's a computer that should have software, that's when I make them a manifest.
That's typically the biggest those files get is like 4 kilobytes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, the core software one, the faculty staff one has a bunch of stuff in it. That's where you put the optional installs as well. So Monkey takes every manifest that you should have. I'll give you an example here. Here's one. Actually, that's not a very good one. But pretty much every, might be a better one. So you can see the included manifests in there, core software labs, and that's in Marion 313, so that's how we abbreviate it. Marion has one of the buildings on campus. So you can see that it gets everything in core software, everything in the labs manifest, and everything in Marion 313, so that I can mix and match. If it's a different lab in Marion Hall, it can still get core software and labs, and I don't have to rebuild the whole thing every time. The labs don't change either very much, so.
I still use Toast.
They wanted
still
Toast.
use Toast, yes.
That's a video production lab. So they wanted Final Cut, I think, and Toast. Oh, and Compressor. So, yeah. So that's all the manifests. It's a very, the directory probably itself takes up maybe a meg or two. 3.8 megs. But, we also use something called Monkey Enroll, which it's a PHP file that you can, because your Monkey repository is a web server, if you install PHP, you can have it create manifests on the fly. So we have that as part of a Deploy Studio workflow. If you run Deploy Studio on a machine that images the computer, you can have it just curl enroll.php, which then creates a manifest on the server. So I
For
was
that machine?
on the server.
No,
So,
I mean, it creates a manifest for that machine also.
from the host name you set in Deploy Studio. So that's how we're able to image computers, re-image computers with new names, and they don't have to involve me. The first couple months of that, where I was making them by hand, was problematic. So.
But it's nice because that way you don't have to keep tweaking the base image. You can just curl the stuff, create the manifest, and then it'll automatically start all the stuff that you need.
At this point, our base image is just an AutoDMG image.
It's probably super thin.
It's completely vanilla because we lay that down, put Monkey on there, set the host name, and then Monkey then goes in from the manifest that Monkey made, or Monkey Enroll made. It pulls down all the software that the computer should have. So that's manifests. Catalogs allow you to separate which software is for testing and release. So if you have Firefox, that app, what are they up to, 38 something? Or
I think it just hit 41.
41. So if you wanted
41.02, I think.
So if 42 came out, but you only wanted to push that to a handful of computers because you think it's going to break something, you can put that into a catalog that you call anything. I call it testing just because it makes sense. And then when you're ready to promote it, you can put it into a catalog called, say, release. And in the manifests, for every computer, you pick which catalogs they check. So for the vast majority of computers on campus, they check the release catalog. Very few computers check a catalog that I call testing. So under testing, I have some stuff that I just haven't vetted yet, or we're not ready to roll out yet. In the case like 1011, a 1011 upgrade installer that was created with Create OS 10 install package, which is another great native creation where you can package up the OS 10 installer into an installer package. It takes the app, extracts the package, puts it in a PKG, and then you can put that in Monkey as well, or Casper. I think Absolute Manager.
How do the catalogs manage complex? Catalog
You can actually layer them, so you can have something in multiple catalogs. That's totally cool.
But like, let's say you have Firefox 41 in one catalog, Firefox 42, how do you stop it from moving on itself?
My guess is that it would only install 42 because it does a comparison based on the version number or whatever you set. You can actually override that if you want to, but the default behaviors for Firefox, if it's a .app install, it'll check the version comparison key when you get info on the application. If it's a package, it'll check the package receipt version.
So what it's doing in the manifest, you're listing catalogs in the order you want to check. So if you have a computer that only gets releases, then it only has the release in that array. If you have something that does testing and release, then testing would generally be above release, and you would hit that first. So you would probably put Firefox 42 in that first, 41 would be the release one. And as long as it's checking, you'll find it in the testing catalog first and use that.
I think it depends on how you create the manifest. So it's like you prioritize and say, testing first and then release, then it would do that. The default behavior, I believe, is to check the version numbers against itself.
Well, once you find something in the catalog, if you have 41 and 42 in both, like in the testing catalog, then it's going to put the highest number.
Check the version number.
So Monkey is open source. All the code is available. I think most of it's written in Python, if not all of it.
I think all of it's written in Python.
Most likely. I haven't gone through, but it's open source. You can contribute. A lot of people contribute really good stuff. The support for things like conditionals, which is probably too complex for me to go into, but it's conditionals was added as a pull request. Was it?
Contribution.
Yes, contribution. People submit code if they need to do something. There's been a thread recently where a lot of the people from Facebook are hacking Monkey to do something, and they want it to be supported and built into the software. So they've actually created the code to make it do the thing they want, and then it looks like that's going to be implemented in the next release as a feature. So a lot of the cool stuff was actually contributed from outside, just Greg. Support's also provided by the community. The wiki is huge. Every so often I'll run into something where it doesn't work the way I think it's supposed to, and I find it on the wiki. And very rarely it doesn't work the way it's supposed to, and I post on the mailing list, and then somebody tells me to look at the wiki. So there's also 2 Google groups. There's Monkey Dev and Monkey Discuss. Monkey Discuss is fairly new, but pretty much everybody looks at both, I think. If you're not doing development, you should post the non-dev one, but for the longest time, Monkey Dev existed as the only one. So that's where most of the action is. You can implement things like SSL client authentication so that you don't just have an open HTTP web server. We've done that, which means that all the people that have laptops that take them off campus and maybe don't bring them back for a year, they're still getting software updates. I'm actually in the process of tracking down the last couple of people now that just never bring their computer back.
Does that work like over a VPN connection, like through VPN?
Originally, we were doing VPN, but so you can do client authentication because it's just talking to the web server like any old way. So we use IIS, which I know it would be HT password. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it.
2 supported methods: password authentication and certificate-based authentication.
Right. Certificate was too complicated for me. So I just went with, you can set basic authentication, which just is a password to the repository. And so it's not being sent over clear text. You can then add, if you have an SSL cert, you can just add that. And that encrypts the entire password exchange. The password is saved somewhere deep in the system. So unless your user admins, they're not going to see it. And even then, unless they're looking for it, they're not going to find it.
It goes in the root.
Mm-hmm. So we've done that so that almost every computer on campus is talking to the Monkey server encrypted. And it's totally worth it. I kind of wish I'd known to do it at first because it's made things a lot easier. And Monkey can deploy nearly anything. They added Adobe's installer packages support a while ago. It can do, we're doing Adobe CC 2014, but I've heard people have success with 2015 as well. Adobe's packages are super weird, where they cram their installer as a post-flight in a standard Apple package. So Monkey had to do some special stuff for that, especially determining if like Photoshop's installed, because it's not actually looking at Photoshop.app. It's looking at some weird file that Adobe put somewhere on the system.
And it can remove all the things that it can install.
Correct.
It's either use the system or its knowledge of specific things like the Adobe installer.
Yeah, I've never tested it on rolling things back. Like, say you deploy something, you're like, oh crap, it's actually an exploit, you want to roll it back or something like that. I've never tested it on that. I'm not sure if you've ever come across a situation where you have to push, hey, we're going to remove this if you find this version, and then push the other version. I'm pretty sure you can do that.
Yeah.
Can you go from suck to flow?
Exactly, you go from suck to blow.
like, let's say you rolled out Java on all your computers,
right?
You know, and then you're saying, oh,
God help you.
I need to remove it. Like, right. You want to remove Apple Java 6, it's there forever otherwise. That's something you can do, and you can actually change the thing after you've deployed it, because you're just modifying the files up on the server. So you can change and set different uninstall conditions from what the install conditions were. And once you change it from being a managed install to a managed uninstall, the Monkey just knows, hey, I got to remove it.
Downgrading software is a little more tricky,
right?
Because you have to tell it, like, I don't want Firefox 42, I want Firefox 41 on everyone's computer. By default, the higher number wins. So you have
really an explicit version check, I guess.
You actually, I think the best way to do it, they've discussed different ways to do it, is doing a hash check on the binary, and if it doesn't match the one from 41, it will just delete Firefox and put the one that you want.
So any of it isn't that particular binary.
You obviously want to take 42 out of your release catalog, or else it'll then go, oh, you need 42 now, and then it'll install.
We also want to include 40 or anything else that's not.
So where possible, that's where you do testing, and you make sure that you're not going to downgrade, because it is kind of a hassle. It makes life a little more difficult to do. But you can absolutely override any. That's the install check scripts. I have a fair amount of those for different things, so that we're not like removing a file. Like in the case of local MCX, there's a plist file somewhere on the system for that kind of stuff. I have an install check script that looks for the presence of that file, and if it's there, that's when it has you remove it, so that we're not just running it on every computer, regardless if it ever had local MCX or not.
And for removals, usually it uses the characteristics that you told it to look for to install the thing in the first place. But if you're reversing that and want to uninstall it, there's a whole other set of scripts and conditions that you can use just for uninstall.
So Monkey also, people have contributed sort of side projects, like sister projects for reporting on your clients. We use Monkey Report PHP. It's been great for us, and the author is really responsive. Sal is a fork of Monkey Report PHP written by Graham Gilbert that relies somewhat on Puppet, a factor from Puppet actually, to do a lot of its reporting. Monkey Web Admin was created by Greg Nagel, and it can do some stuff. It doesn't support a lot of the reporting that Monkey Report PHP does, but you can do things like edit manifests from the web app. I think it's written in Django. I don't know how to pronounce it. And Mandrill was written by Joe Waller, so Jeremy, and thinking about implementing that, but that's a whole other thing. Mandrill is really a replacement for Monkey Admin. Have you ever used Mandrill?
I have not.
I was looking into it. It's meant to be a replacement for Monkey Admin. It's a web app, and from there you can do things like have multiple users accessing the repository. You can implement Git so that you have a version history. You can roll things back, or at least see whose fault it was that something broke. You can edit manifests, catalogs, all that stuff. it's a little tricky to install as far as I can tell, and we don't actually have Git implemented at this point. So, but that's, I think, my next big thing is that I want to implement Git so that I'm not the only one touching all this stuff, because it gets weird when like my boss opens up Monkey Admin and I have Monkey Admin open and I save something and he has to reload to see it. Once you want to scale more out to more than just one person, that's where something like Git really helps. And Alistair has ideas for how to implement Git. He's written articles in AFP 548 and he's currently in Slack right now, so I'm typing furiously.
Actually, I think he's on the train right now. So.
Oh, okay.
So.
He wrote some really good AFP 548 articles on how to do that.
The basic thing there is that everything that Monkey's doing besides the packages are all text files, but it's very easy to put into.
So I went into it a little bit, but we have one manifest per machine. We have included manifests. So most manifests that are out there just contain the release catalog, core software, and faculty staff, because that is by far the most frequent type of computer that's out there on campus. That allows users to install pretty much all the Adobe software, since we have a site license, Chrome, and anything else that we don't bundle with the machine that we don't deem that you have to have, such as Microsoft Office and Firefox. So that's kept things fairly lightweight. I try to avoid wherever possible putting something in someone's manifest, especially if it's something I can make optional to everybody. So that for a while we didn't have the Adobe software as optional installs, and we were getting just requests every week for, oh, this user needs Photoshop, this user needs Illustrator, and we have to go in there and add it to their manifest or add groups of applications to their manifest. So giving people the ability to install it themselves has really helped. I like empowering people to do stuff themselves, and it gets them more comfortable with the interface. This isn't something IT's pushing on them. This is something that we're trying to take all the load of updating your computer off of them and giving them the ability to install software without ever having to put in a ticket, have a technician come out to their office and install it for them. So I use testing catalogs. I have a bunch of test machines, just old computers that I've commandeered and I'm using just for pushing test packages to the machines before we push them out to actual people's computers.
You have an enterprise license for your Adobe? Or you want to call?
Enterprise.
Great.
It's been great so far not to have to track that kind of licensing. Oh, that's what I wanted to show you guys. So this is Monkey Report. Monkey Report, pardon all the tabs and stuff, but Monkey Report is how we track all of that kind of stuff. So you can see, I'm actually going to take the faculty staff machines out there so that nobody's names pop up. But I can show you the labs. So if I reload here, so you can see which computers they're pending installs. Like 37 computers are pending the latest semantic version that added 10.11 support. Pending Apple updates, which ones have older Monkey versions, new clients, all that stuff. There are reports, so you can add the app versions as a custom thing. You can specify which programs you want to track versions of. That's been really helpful. I think.
I just have a quick question. I saw that you had the ability to see stuff involving the battery. How accurate is that?
A lot of this stuff is just pulled from System Profiler. I think it's under the power. Is there a power report? Yeah. So this is pulled from System Profiler. So if you click like this, I can see health. This laptop in one of the labs. We have a couple laptop labs. This one, the battery is at 13% health, and it says replace now.
And that's in 2 weeks.
What's that?
Hasn't checked in 2 weeks.
That might be related. So I live in this. Every day I'm looking in here and I'm seeing like what doesn't look right, what's not reporting in, what's producing errors. I'm kind of just looking for trouble every day, trying to figure out what can I do to make things more efficient. If I see a bunch of computers just looping installs or erroring, I'll figure out that maybe it's some Adobe package doing something stupid, and I should make it require a reboot because the Adobe updaters don't like to install one after another. So I'm now requiring them all to require a reboot to successfully install. So, which is a shame because most people won't reboot their computer. So if they want their Adobe apps, they're going to have to reboot. It's the other. There's a backup report now. You can see time machine status, in which case our labs don't actually have time machine drives connected to them, but you can actually see when a computer last backed up, whether it was successful, I think how big the backup was when it ran. The client report, I love this. This shows what types of computers and how many you have, and how it's grown over time, and the OS breakdown, which if I enabled like the faculty, staff, and all those other computers, you'd be able to see that we have a mix of 10.6, 10.7, 10.8, 10.9, 10.10, and like a dozen 10.11 machines, some of which are test, like half of them are test machines. In the labs, we successfully upgraded everything to 10.10 this past summer. You can see which ones are active, which ones are inactive, which computers haven't checked in for a month, which computers haven't checked in for a week.
Are people actively developing APIs for use with this? Like, example, like people may not necessarily use like Time Machine. I don't know if it's got a local backup, but like if you're using CrashPlan or Backblaze or like, is there any? I mean, I don't know if you would know this, but like, do you know if anybody develops APIs for this or any plans for that kind of thing? Or
This is an open source project too. Yep. So pull requests are accepted, and you make modules. All these modules, almost all of them are community contributed. Martin Goldberg wrote one of them, I think. Recently, he's been making a lot of noise on GitHub about which ones he wants done. Randy Six built the app versions one because he wanted to see who has the latest Flash player. This might not be completely accurate though because it's basing off of the system profiler information. So if they're not reporting back, I think that's where you have the discrepancies. I'm pretty sure most everything's up to date. I know there's a CrashPlan one in development. I don't know when that's going to happen. I also know that they're working on CSV export. That might actually be in the new version that was released yesterday, but I haven't installed it. I usually wait a couple days to see when people post on the mailing list that they're having problems, then I'll hold off until the bug fix. I can see smart status, so if a computer's failing smart, that's typically before the computer, since it's reporting back, that's before it's failed. So we'll go out and we'll replace the hard drive in a lab computer or podium before anyone realizes anything's wrong. You can see some of these computers are 5 years old that are running the labs. The good news is they still run Yosemite, so we can do that. Which ones are pending updates, the manifests, which ones have the most pending installs, and surprise, it's the laptops, because we suppress auto installations for most things in the laptops. Because we don't want, well, in the labs especially, we don't want the labs to prompt any user when they're sitting in class to install any updates. So we suppress that while logged in. We rely on the installations that occur at the login window. Monkey has 2 ways that you can install software, primarily through the GUI, and that's when you're logged in or when you're not logged in. When you're not logged in, you can just you can send a command to touch a file in a folder, an invisible file. It's like com.google code something. And if you look at that, if you put that in there, Monkey will see that exists and immediately run if it's in the login window. So that's how, if I have a computer lab that has to be updated right now, I touch that file and it goes off and it does it. That's also useful for bootstrapping. So if you use Deploy Studio and you put the image on there, you could just touch that file as part of your last step of your Deploy Studio process, and that's what kicks off Monkey to check in, use the manifest that was just created, and then download all the software it needs. So reimaging computer lab computers is easy. Just send a student out, student worker to log into Deploy Studio, run the workflow. It finds the manifest, downloads what software it needs, and then it's done. It's available. We have everything in Monkey at this point. The local admin account, all the scripts to enable ARD, SSH, removing local MCX, any software that's required. all the updates, almost every software that's required. I just got Finale in there because the Finale 2014 installer is not as stupid as the 2012 installer. SPSS is in there too. You can copy that to temp and run it as a post-flight, so that works. So in most cases, it'll take 15 minutes for faculty staff machine, mostly because I fit things optional, but for a lab computer, it's longer because we don't give people the choice to install software in the labs. But we have laptop labs as well, some of which are hardwired because the faculty want to be able to have their students close the lids when they're in class, and some of which are wireless because they want to have people move around or they want to move the laptops between classrooms. And for those, we are even more restrictive. We don't even have the login window installations occur because we don't want there to be any point where a student can open up a laptop and it goes, okay, and it starts downloading software and they can't use it. So that's why the stuff unfortunately piles up on the laptops. You can see which ones are generating errors. I can look at this computer. Something's wrong with this one. Just software update error 100, which happens, I guess. That is a mysterious error that nobody knows why it exists. Some of the other ones here, I think this is that Adobe error that I was talking about, where it won't let you run more than one at a time, even though it successfully installed Lightroom, or it successfully installed the Camera Raw update, and now it won't install Lightroom because it thinks the camera update's still on. I don't know. We've imported and automated importing Adobe updates through a separate script that's written by a guy named Tim Sutton. And that will, you can give it the plist files that you pull. You generate plist files from your Creative Cloud package installers, and then you feed those plists to Importer, which then pulls down all the updates and imports them into Monkey. So I have that running nightly, although the same server that we're using for Auto Package, which is doing the same thing where it emails the output to our group and lets us know what's up there. And then I go into Monkey Admin and I, push that out. I test it and push it out to the computers. So I've been rambling for a long time. Does anybody have any questions?
What do you feel that we have an employee studio that just have like a separate kickoff script that does all things for you?
Like for an existing computer?
Or for a new computer, you said that the only thing you have it do is enroll itself into Monkey, create the manifest. Wouldn't there just be like an easier way to do that? Some kind of script that kicks it off?
Mm-hmm. You could. The only thing is that we do AD binding. We do that through Monkey as well. But AD binding relies on the computer name to be set. So unfortunately, the setup assistant doesn't contain stuff like setting up the computer, installing your local admin account. Although 1010, I think, or 1011 added support for doing that through DEP. But we don't use DEP for the Macs because, unlike Casper, there's nothing open source for DEP for the Macs. So I think that's where people are starting to head right now, where if you had your own DEP server, or if you had your own mobile device management server, say an open source implementation of mobile device management, you pay for your own cert, which apparently is Pepine Brent figured out that it's $200 if you ask the right person at Apple. You can run your own mobile device management server, and then from there you can install packages, so you can put Monkey in there. So I think that's where it's going to go eventually, and I really hope that somebody figures that out, because that would be awesome. We could just have somebody open up the computer out of the box, start it up, and installs Monkey. If there was a way to set the computer name, that would be awesome. That's how we use Manifest. You can also do Manifest based on serial number. When a computer with Monkey checks in, it tries a list of default values. One of those is the host name, one of them is the serial number.
UEID? UEID?
I don't know. I don't think so. Do you know the offhand? There's a wiki page on it. Monkey wiki. It's a frequently asked question. So he wrote a page called "How Monkey Decides What Needs to Be Installed." So I think it's in here though. Where is the? Maybe it's not in here. I guess not. There is a wiki page. The only problem with the wiki is that sometimes if you know there's something in there, but you don't know where it is, it's really hard to find. I've had a hard time searching through it. It's probably
And if you Google for stuff, you're likely to find the old pages on Google Code rather than the new pages on GitHub.
Right. The project moved away from Google Code, what, like a year ago to GitHub. So when you Google things like certain version keys and stuff, it'll point you to the old website, which is no longer being updated. Has it in all caps that it's not being updated anymore, and it might even be old information at this point. Some of it might be outdated considering they've made some major changes to it. But there is a set of criteria that the computer looks when it's checking in with the server to try to determine what manifest it should use. And if it can't satisfy any of those criteria, that's when it pulls down the manifest called site default. It's just site_default. You can put anything in there if you want, and any computer that it doesn't already have a manifest will do that. So for us, we install Monkey, just the Monkey Tools package, just freely downloadable on someone's computer if it's already out there and doesn't have Monkey. And then after that reboots and that loads the launchd scripts, then we can then go in and see if the name needs to be fixed. Monkey we have a package for key binding. I based it off of Grant Gilbert's script, which he basically stole it from Deploy Studio. So pretty much everything will happen through Monkey at this point. I've tried really hard to make it so that imaging a computer through Deploy Studio doesn't gain you anything over just installing Monkey and running it, because it's a hassle to re-image people's computers just for the sake of getting things like AD binding and stuff.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mike. All right.